estimate the longer run neutral level of the federal funds rate to be in around 2.5%. And actually, we think it will be appropriate to raise rates above a neutral level into a modestly restrictive level, because this is very high inflation and it's hurting everybody, and we need to do our job and get inflation back on a path down to 2%. And the way we're going to do that, we think, is raise rates, of course, to that level. Of course, everything depends on the data that we see. We're really strongly committed to getting inflation down to 2%, but we're going to be flexible as we see the data coming in.
Do you agree with the perspective, and then I'll be done, but do you agree with the perspective that if interest rates go too high, too fast, it could drive us into a recession?
It's certainly a possibility. It's not our intended outcome at all, but it's certainly a possibility. And frankly, the events of the last few months around the world have made it more difficult for us to achieve what we want, which is 2% inflation and still a...
What I'm trying to get at, though, is what does the tool of raising rates do? And part of what you just said is that it increases, in effect, the cost to invest, to buy those trucks or new plants or to hire new people. The reason I raise this and the reason I'm so concerned about this is rate increases make it more likely that companies will fire people and slash hours to shrink wage costs. Rate increases also make it more expensive for families to do things like borrow money for a house. And so far, the cost this year of a mortgage has already doubled. Inflation is like an illness, and the medicine needs to be tailored to the specific problem. Otherwise, you could make things a lot worse. And right now, the Fed has no control over the main drivers of rising prices, but the Fed can slow demand by getting a lot of people fired and making families poorer. And while President Biden is working to increase energy supply,
was recently asked if the $1.9 trillion spending bill caused inflation, he said he didn't think the bill had even a minor impact and called the idea, quote, bizarre. Chair Powell, do you agree with the president's conclusion that the $1.9 trillion that was included in the American so-called rescue plan had not even a minor impact on the inflation we're seeing today?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't comment on what any elected official said, and it's really not up to us to score fiscal interventions.
Again, sir, if you would, respectfully, I'm not asking you to comment on what the president said. I'm asking you personally, do you believe that the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan did not even have a minor impact on the inflation we're seeing today?
We didn't comment on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We didn't comment on the CARES Act, and we won't comment on that act. And from that,
it's interesting, sir. Reclaiming, it's interesting, sir, that you won't comment on this, but you were more than willing a year ago to talk about inflation as some transitory something that everyone has acknowledged now. It's going to be here for
power. A party without any resilient or discernible principle has stumbled upon inflation. There's inflation all over the world. Germany, Japan, Africa, South America, the United Kingdom. There's inflation all over the world. But the Republican Party has decided that inflation is Joe Biden's fault, or the American Recovery Plan's fault. I've read the monetary policy report from start to finish. It gives the Russian invasion of Ukraine, supply chain bottlenecks, high fuel costs, high wage growth. It does not mention Joe Biden or the American Recovery Plan. By the way, the American Recovery Plan is a particularly rank piece of dishonesty. Set aside the fact that it cut childhood poverty in half. As Mr. Green pointed out, if that isn't something to celebrate and to perhaps have the slightest bit of humility as you attack it, I don't know what I can do for you. The American Recovery Plan, as Mr. Emmer pointed out, was about a third to a quarter of the fiscal efforts that this Congress made on a largely bipartisan effort to lift our economy to the point where it is today. The chairman said, strong and well recovered. Unemployment at 3.6%. So many jobs out there that many of them are going unfilled. Did we overshoot? Maybe we did. But the American Recovery Plan, this thing that cut childhood poverty in this country in half, was about a quarter to a third of the fiscal efforts. The other money was supported by President Trump. But by the way, it's not those dollars that are still sitting in Americans' bank accounts. It's not CARES dollars. No, that was supported by the Republican Party. It's only those dollars in the American Recovery Plan that cut childhood poverty in half. Energy prices. I read the Monetary Policy Report. I'll quote it. Because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, oil prices rose sharply. I've been around here long enough to know that putting facts and truth out is like spitting into a hurricane, but it's important for the American people to understand that.